Is there trouble in paradise? You can freaking bet. Ryuji is your typical ugly invisible weirdo who has 0 Riz and minus 27 aura. His stupid life turns upside down when his cousin Eriko comes around, and to make matters worse, these two idiots lay hands on a relic box that will change the course of their lives forever. Kisaragi Ryuji, a typical high schooler, kicks off his day like any other, rolling out of bed like a die. In the pool of his sweat after a very weird dream and I saw his face, he's just as ugly as I am. He's preparing for school and hopped on the train with 2 kids sitting opposite him playing video games, having the time of their lives while he just looks at them like he's regretting getting out of bed. Once in class, he exchanges greetings with his buddy Masato while Misaki, another classmate, awkwardly tries to say hello but struggles to find her words. She just stands there turning to a red-hot lava monster. Class begins. The lady who tried to greet him but could not form the words, and now I can't believe that this ugly face monkey has a 6 drooling over him and the blind cow can't see it. While she stares at him all class long, and soon a stunning girl, stunning is not the word, a 9.5 that I could never pull in a lifetime unless I get isekai'd into an anime world with extraordinary stats. Her name is Eriko, bursts into the classroom, instantly grabbing the attention of every guy there. Eriko heads straight to Ryuji's desk and whisks him away, leaving the mind of everyone in the class blown. As it turns out, Eriko is Ryuji's cousin back from overseas, and she needs his help with something big, like the world ending big. They take a ride in her car, where she hands Ryuji a laptop, registering him as the first member of a mysterious organization called the Seven Tails. Talk about getting dragged into something unexpected. He tries to fight his way out, but after she plunged him into her melons, he had no choice but to comply with her spell. They arrive at their destination, a shady location where a group called the Fang is about to make a deal. Eriko's mission is to retrieve a package connected to a lost precious that was stolen from her family. As darkness falls, multiple black cars pull up. The 2 Mission Impossible agents stand at the corner watching, with Eriko replenishing her spell by putting her melons all over his head. Men, I needed that, but the last person I could pull had nothing but the straightest ruler curves and the packages of a perfect ironing board. The Fang receives the briefcase from their dealer. Eriko uses some lost precious magic to put everyone to sleep in a matter of seconds. Ryuji quickly grabs the case, and with the package in hand, Ryuji helps load it into Eriko's van, but not before some of the Fang members wake up and start shooting at them. A frantic escape ensues, complete with bullets flying and cars chasing them down. In true action Hariko style, Eriko showcases her epic driving skills, evading their pursuers by speeding through tight corners. But just when they think they're in the clear, a bullet hits the briefcase, causing it to pop open. Out of it emerges an angel. A blonde girl who knows Ryuji's name. She's not in the mood for games. When the bad guys keep shooting, she unleashes a massive fireball that torches everything in its path, allowing Ryuji and Eriko to make a daring escape. That firepower reminds me of Fire Force because, let's be real, that firepower is totally Shinra-worthy. Later that evening, Misaki waits outside Ryuji's building, hiding when she sees him arriving with Eriko and the mysterious blonde. Once inside, Ryuji's curiosity gets the best of him and he starts questioning the girl's identity. Eriko is intrigued too, especially since the girl knows Ryuji's name. However, the moment Eriko tries to touch the girl's neckpiece, the girl gets hostile, until she sees Ryuji and calms down, hugging him instead. Despite Eriko's attempts to communicate with the girl, the only thing she does is cling to Ryuji, repeating his name. Eventually, Ryuji suggests calling the society for help, but Eriko has other plans. She assigns Ryuji to babysit for the night. He's less than thrilled, but the girl isn't going anywhere. Later on a supply run, Ryuji bumps into Misaki, who's brought his school bag. After thanking her, he returns to his apartment, only to find it in... well, that pretty much looks like my room every other day. The girl had refused to shower, throwing a fit while he was out. Eriko then reveals a dragon-shaped marking on the girl's hand, hinting that she might be a red dragon. Dinner follows where Ryuji, Eriko, and the girl, now named Rose, thanks to Ryuji, try to relax after a chaotic day. Rose, delighted with her new name, quickly starts learning to communicate with the help of Eriko and some cues from the TV. The next morning, Ryuji freaks out when he finds Rose in his bed. As they eat breakfast, a scientist arrives via chopper, summoning them to the society. Onyx, a black dragon in a car on his way to the research base. On the chopper, they chat about Lost Precious with the scientist Takura, revealing that dragons are among the most special of these items. Takura, a dragon researcher, is thrilled to see Rose up close. Once at the research facility, Takura performs various tests on Rose, and each time she just hangs on to Ryuji like a leech. One time in the helicopter, she got really scared of Tokuro's obsessive behavior and blasted him with fire. The moron researcher just screamed out of joy. Tokuro, after testing her like a lab rat, noted that her body resembles a human's. Meanwhile, Ryuji Ryuji and Eriko reveal their breakers, with Eriko being a level 7 breaker, which sounds impressive, but guess what? Ryuji is a level 10 breaker, and apparently his parents are some badass agents like Yor and Light from Spy X Family, acknowledging who they truly are, procreating and training their kids to be a spy and a lethal killing machine. Tokura predicts Rose will eventually grow wings and asks Ryuji is touch her back for sprouts, cause if anyone dared to touch her, they'd become roasted beef. He examined her back, and it led to a moment where Ryuji recalls finding a dragon egg on a mountain long ago when his parents took him to the mountain in search for an egg. He got separated from them, and when he got to the egg, it hatched the pretty thing he's massaging. That all happened about the same time the researcher whose dairy they've drawn all their dragon hypothesis from. This memory seems surreal, but as Tokura delves deeper, they discover that Ryuji had indeed met Rose before. Looks like their bond runs deeper than Ryuji ever imagined. Tokura begins to theorize that Ryuji and Rose share a special bond known as imprinting. He explains this phenomenon, comparing it to the idea of frost impressions, suggesting this might be why Rose feels such a strong attachment to Ryuji. You know how imprinting works. The first person an animal that hatched from an egg sees is automatically its mama. Meanwhile, at school, Misaki and her classmates notice Ryuji's absence. Misaki suddenly remembers seeing Ryuji carrying Rose on his back the day before and wonders who she might be. Back at the research lab, Eriko calls Ryuji's mom and hands the phone to him. During their conversation, Ryuji's mom urgently warns him not to let the organization take Rose. She even tells him she's catching the next flight to Japan. Before hanging up, she emphasizes that the organization will lock Rose away forever. After the call, Ryuji's mood darkens and Rose, sensing this, tries to comfort him. However, Ryuji, overwhelmed by everything, snaps at her, like the dumb cow he is, telling her to leave him alone, causing her to feel deeply hurt. Outside the research facility, the black car pulls up and a mysterious figure steps out. This man bears a similar marking on his hand, revealing he's also a dragon. Eriko, noticing Ryuji's distress, urges him to speak with Rose, reminding him that he might not see her again. As Ryuji approaches Rose, she suddenly senses someone outside the lab. The security guard who noticed the black car approached it and warned the occupants that they're on private property. The mysterious man swiftly takes down the guards, making his way into the research facility, triggering a red alert. Despite the facility's defenses, the man effortlessly breaks through, and the guards watching on security cameras take up defensive positions. When they finally confront him, they realize he's just a teenager. They open fire, but the mysterious figure unfurls his dragon wings. Bro is living the Dracula moment and blocking the bullets. He then kills all the guards and enters the main lab where Eriko and Ryuji are. Introducing himself as Onyx, he refers to Rose as his betrothed and nanny. He reveals that he's a black dragon and says the choker on Rose's neck is proof of their betrothal, and then he announces his intention to take Rose with him. After defeating Ryuji and Eriko. Damn! What is that angle? Look at that angle of Eriko's fatty behind as she's on the floor. Onyx, however, was about to end the poor boy, but Rose held his hand, indicating that he stopped. He turns around and Rose follows him despite the ugly cow's screams. When they drive away, she cries. This ought to be another car they're driving in, because when they arrived, I vividly remember Onyx kicking out the door. As they drive away, Onyx uses his magic to make Rose fall asleep. Back at the research facility, Eriko and Tokura regain consciousness. Eriko declares that they must rescue Rose from Onyx. Meanwhile, at Onyx's residence, he enters the room where Rose is lying and places his hand on her face. Rose immediately wakes up and attacks him with a plate. During their conversation, Rose discovers Onyx's plan to make her his bride. He points to her necklace, explaining it symbolizes their engagement, a tradition passed down through generations. Onyx soon finds a tracking device on Rose and tosses it to Kai, a female guard, ordering her to prepare for an assault. Onyx then reveals his true intentions behind the engagement. He said it's a ceremony meant to unlock a dragon's full power. Rose is intrigued and is shocked to learn that Onyx seeks to gather all lost precious items and make himself more powerful, believing it to be the ultimate dragon's wish. Back at the research facility, Eriko encourages Ryuji, reminding him that Rose went with Onyx to save their lives. This sparks a memory in Ryuji of the time Rose saved him from falling off a cliff when she first hatched out of the egg, igniting his determination to rescue her. Ryuji, Eriko, and Tokura set off to retrieve a weapon known as Slash Breath, which Ryuji activates with its hidden magical powers by focusing on his desire to get back the only girl who'd probably be the only one to love his ugly face, and the power from the blade slashes down the pillars in the room like a Santoryu onigiri that Zoro uses in One Piece. Meanwhile, Rose wakes up and tries to escape, only to be confronted by Onyx. She attempts to use her fire powers against him, but they have no effect. Onyx manipulates Rose, convincing her that humans and dragons can't coexist, and that humans despise dragons because of their world-ending power. Distraught Rose starts to believe him, but then Onyx is alerted that a chopper from the society is approaching. Outside the skyscraper, Ryuji, Eriko, and Takura arrive in the chopper and notice a magic barrier protecting the building. Ryuji uses Slash Breath to destroy the barrier in one slash, allowing them to enter the building with a team of soldiers. Inside, they face heavy resistance, but Eriko, Takura, and Ryuji push through to the elevator. While riding up, Eriko explains that Rose is drawn to Ryuji because of love at first sight, a classic shoujo trope if there ever was one. When they reach the room, they find Onyx attempting to complete the engagement ceremony with Rose. Rose, who's now under Onyx's influence, tells Ryuji to stay away, declaring that she hates humans and him. Onyx smirks as Rose weeps. But Ryuji is undeterred and confesses that he likes Rose, causing her demeanor to change instantly. This leaves Onyx enraged and he prepares to attack Ryuji, but Rose intervenes, expanding her wings to shield him. In a dramatic showdown, Ryuji and Rose join forces to battle Onyx. With Rose's support, Ryuji manages to hold off the Black Dragon's attack. Ryuji took one good look at the disgusting thing on Rose's neck that probably looked like a slave chained to him and destroyed the necklace on her neck, further angering Onyx. A fierce fight ensues, but in the end, Ryuji and Rose emerge victorious. Eriko shoots at Onyx, and it's the earring in his ear, which she claims to be her family treasure. The earring drops from his ear, and Eriko quickly retrieves it. Onyx unleashes his full dragon form, causing chaos as he obliterates half of the building with just a single swipe. His sheer size and power make him nearly impervious to regular magic attacks, leaving Ryuji scratching his head, wondering how on earth he's supposed to stop this behemoth. It's like trying to fight a Titan in Attack on Titan, except, without any of that nifty 3D maneuver gear. Amidst all the mayhem, Ryuji and Rose's hands begin to glow, and before you know it, these two virgins quickly join hands together and manage to perform the engagement ceremony, which supercharges Ryuji's magical abilities. With his newfound strength, Ryuji strikes a devastating blow to Onyx, bringing him down, or so it seems. If not that Onyx is the bad guy, but damn! That dragon look is so cool. However, Ryuji collapses, coughing up blood, and for a moment it looks like things might end badly. But Rose channeled her inner Sailor Moon and used her powers to heal him with a Kissing. Onyx's body is nowhere to be found, leaving everyone to wonder if he's truly gone. But for now, we are happy to have retrieved Rose, who's now currently clinging onto Ryuji as they drive away and confessing her love with lip clappings. Fast forward a week and things between Ryuji and Rose get a little heated, not in a romantic way, but more in the "why are you leaving me alone for days" kind of way. Rose doesn't handle this well at all, and in a dramatic flare, she unfurls her wings right in the middle of the house. If you didn't see it, it looked kind of sweet to see Eriko's melons bounce to the wind Rose's wings were causing. Eriko steps in like the smooth operator she is, saying Ryuji owes her one and whispering something to Rose that instantly calms her down, leaving Ryuji scratching his head and wondering what magic truce Eriko was telling Rose. The next day, Ryuji sets off for a summer vacation at a friend's place and ends up at the beach. Look at the two of them standing on the beach, and ladies aside, I have never seen a main character look so ugly, downright disgusting, and at that, look at his body, so plain, so smooth, like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's head. Damn! At the beach, he bumps into Misaki, who's super self-conscious about being in a swimsuit in front of guys. When she spots Ryuji, she freaks out and gets all shy, but Ryuji is already heading for the water, oblivious to her embarrassment. Misaki musters up the courage to talk to him, but just as she does, Ryuji's attention is caught by someone else. Let me tell you how it happened. Imagine walking up to someone you are crushing hard on, and they turn around and start running towards you. You mistakenly slip up and open your arms and strike. They run right past you to the person they were running to. You need to see how mortified she looked. At least it wasn't the get out of my way scene. It's Rose he saw and ran to, actually. Ryuji is as confused as a character in a slice-of-life anime, wondering what she's doing there. To add to the chaos, Eriko is also there, and I know that this is all her master plan. Her presence draws a crowd of Ryuji's classmates. Ryuji is worried about the dragon mark on Rose's hand, but it's been covered with a layer of fake skin. Meanwhile, a mysterious girl watches from afar. Later that day, Ryuji gets a letter delivered to him while he's inside a building. That evening, he heads out, but Rose and Eriko follow him to meet the someone despite his disapproval. We all know if he leaves Rose for a minute, she's going to act like Mimin from The Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime Anime and destroy everything. It turns out to be Maruga, a white dragon with ice powers. After introductions, Maruga wastes no time in identifying Rose as a red dragon and then lays out her agenda. She needs Ryuji and his friends to help recover a white dragon's heirloom sword, which was stolen by a guy named George Evans who lives in a nearby church. Maruga warns them that George is a level breaker, meaning he's not one to mess around. If George keeps the sword, disaster is just around the corner. The next day, Ryuji decides to scope out the church alone. When he arrives, the place seems deserted until George himself steps out and catches Ryuji snooping around. The initial tension eases as George starts talking, even welcoming Ryuji to the church. When Ryuji catches sight of the sword, he freaks out, realizing its power. George soon figures out that Ryuji is a breaker too. They strike up a conversation, and George shares a tale from hundreds of years ago about a village attacked by a dragon. A hero emerged. defeated the dragon, and then vanished, leaving behind the legendary sword. George reveals that his goal is to use the sword to wipe out dragons. As the story wraps up, Rose bursts into the church, hugging Ryuji tightly. Ryuji tries to hide Rose's true identity as a dragon by covering her hand, but the situation takes a turn when some men who had a previous run-in with Rose storm into the church looking for her. George, seeing this, grabs the sword, and its power sends the intruders running. The sword's effect leaves a massive ice deposit in the church, showing just how powerful it really is. Ryuji and Rose make a hasty retreat back to the hotel, and at the hotel, Maruga apologizes for not giving them enough intel about the sword, and confirms that it's indeed the White Dragon's heirloom. She pleads with Ryuji and the others to help retrieve it from George. Ryuji's classmates show up, and the monkey he has as a friend invites Maruga to a festival, and later that evening, they all attend a festival where Ryuji wins prizes for Rose and Misaki. George shows up, sees Maruga, and nearly loses his cool. Later, Maruga tells Ryuji a story about how dragons and humans can't coexist because one time, a dragon fell in love, the love had given birth to so much false rumors, and the dragon went on rampage until it was stopped, and Ryuji can't help but notice how similar her story is to George's. Their conversation is interrupted when George invites Maruga to join him for the upcoming mass at the church. The next day, Maruga meets Ryuji and Eriko at their hotel room to plan their next move against George. Eriko suggests using George's obvious crush on Maruga to their advantage so they can snag the sword from the church. That day, George and Maruga go to the beach together. George tries to be all chivalrous, getting floaters when he finds out Maruga can't swim. But when he returns, Maruga stuns him by revealing her swimsuit, and George can't help but stare. Who can blame the guy? Take a look at her melons. Eriko wishes them luck, and sneaks off with Ryuji and Rose. From a distance, Eriko watches George and Maruga in the water. Everything seems to be going according to plan when Maruga's melon cover gets swept away by the current, sending George into a panic as he dives in to retrieve it. Maruga ran back to the beach shore embarrassed and shot herself right into that engaged virgin's arms. Eriko takes this opportunity to instruct Maruga to keep George distracted while they move on to the next phase of the plan. Ryuji and Eriko hop into a car heading for the church. Rose is visibly upset, knowing that Ryuji intends to steal something precious from George. When they reach the church, they quietly observe what's happening inside from a window. They spot a man holding a knife against a little boy and threatening to end him unless they give him the sword, and Ryuji decides to intervene. Eriko uses her magic to confuse the knife-wielding man, giving Ryuji the chance to sneak into the church and swipe the sword while everyone is distracted. However, things don't go smoothly as Ryuji ends up bumping into the man with the knife, and they both fall flat on the ground. As Ryuji reaches for the sword, the man with the knife tumbles to the ground, making Ryuji look like the hero of the hour. However, just when things seem to be calming down, the police arrive and arrest the knife-wielding man, with church members insisting that his strange behavior started when George first appeared. Ryuji then confirms with Maruga that the sword is cursed and possesses the power to manipulate a person's mind. Maruga reveals that the white dragon slain in the past was her uncle, and her father had to come down in human form to kill him to prevent greater chaos. Later that day, Kai, one of Onyx's guards, visits George at the church to share information about the red dragon. Meanwhile, Ryuji and his allies brainstorm a new plan to retrieve the sword. During this, Rose and Ryuji argue because Rose wants to confront George directly, but Ryuji warns her it's a bad idea, fearing George might attack if he discovers she's a dragon. After fighting the black dragon himself, I can't believe he's scared of a little sword fight. Their disagreement ends with Rose storming off, leaving Ryuji to wonder where she's gone. Eriko quickly notices Rose's absence and begins to worry as well. That evening, Ryuji, Eriko, and Maruga dash out of their hotel, only to be interrupted by Misaki and her classmates. Mao, one of Ryuji's friends, curiously asks what he's up to, but Ryuji just hands a gift he won earlier to Misaki before hurrying off with the others. And FYI, while Eriko drove off with Ryuji, Rose muttered to herself that even though they're engaged, he never listens to her. Misaki heard this and was more mortified than Goku and Luffy when they heard that the meat finished before they could get a share. She shared the news, and the others really wanted to know if he's truly engaged. Moments later, Rose takes flight and meets George just outside the church. It's there that George realizes Rose is a dragon. He leads her back into the church while Ryuji, Maruga, and Eriko race in a car to reach them. Inside the church, Rose and George engage in a heated discussion about dragons. Their conversation quickly escalates, leading George to draw his sword with the intent to strike. Just then, Ryuji arrives, catching George mid-swing. Ryuji desperately tries to convince George that Rose isn't a demon. Eriko steps in, urging George to relinquish the sword, but he refuses. Maruga enters and warns that the sword is cursed, yet George still chooses violence. I guess love ain't blind here. In the ensuing chaos, Ryuji manages to shield Rose from harm. Rose pleads with Ryuji Ryuji to save George, but Eriko's magic fails to affect him. Ryuji, realizing he needs Rose's help, asks her to amplify his powers through their engagement. They, in no time, quickly perform the Power Ranger transformation ceremony, and Ryuji lands a blow on George, causing the sword to shatter. George returns to normal, stunned that the dragons he despised were the ones who saved him. The next day, Maruga prepares to leave the beach, but not before lip-clapping Ryuji after saying she knows he's engaged to Rose, but they ain't married yet. The virgin stood there like a log of wood and accepted to be lip-clapped, making Rose jealous. Rose immediately turned and asked if they would get married immediately. Misaki comes and hears this, and it reaffirms the engagement thing she heard a while ago. A few days later, a girl rescues a cat from a tree but ends up falling. Ryuji tries to save her, only for the girl to fall right on his face. A phenomenon I'd like to call peach face slap. Just like the guy from Love Flops who met the third girl at the staircase and she fell right on his face. Can't remember his name because he was a very lonely and ugly cow who just wanted to escape reality, while the cat bolts away. When Ryuji attempts to strike up a conversation, the girl ignores him and walks off. Later, Ryuji, dressed sharply in a suit, attends an event at a swanky venue. He meets up with Eriko, who's looking stunning in that elegant dress that's showing off her wonderful juicy melons. The event, turns out, is a gathering of society's elites, with distinguished guests arriving in style. Rose joins them, and Ryuji can't help but compliment her on her wonderful red dress. The event kicks off, and Eriko guides Ryuji and Rose to the main party. Eriko hands Ryuji his lost precious, revealing that the event is a place where people display their lost treasures. She encourages Ryuji to mingle and show off his own. As they walk around, Eriko fills Ryuji in on the history of the event's attendees. Among them is a collector named Makihara, who had his collection stolen along with his child many years ago. They bump into a man named Seiki, who introduces himself as a new collector of lost precious items. Seiki notices the lost precious around Eriko's neck and exchanges contact information with her, offering to provide more details on her missing treasure. Ryuji then spots the girl from earlier and asks if she's part of the event. She confirms, then leaves when something else catches Ryuji's eye. From a distance, Rose watches this interaction and misinterprets it as a sign of Ryuji being unfaithful. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appears at the event, stealing valuables, including lost precious items from various guests. Security is called in, but she easily evades them like a ninja. Ryuji notices the similarities between Ai, the two colored eyes thief, and the girl he met earlier when Ai tries to snatch Eriko's lost precious. At one point, a weapon is aimed at an elderly woman, but Ai uses her wolf-like powers to block it. The guards move in on Ai, but Ryuji steps in, preventing them from attacking, which makes the guards suspicious of his intentions. Taking advantage of the confusion, Ai escapes, and Ryuji is left to give a statement later. Eriko appreciates Ryuji's efforts in helping her keep her lost precious safe. She explains that it has the power to hear the truth, allowing its wearer to read the hearts of others. She also mentions that only female breakers can use it. That night, Ryuji retires to his room, but something feels off. He wakes up to find his betrothed sleeping next to him, and as he moves out of the room, he finds Ai trying to steal Eriko's lost precious. Ryuji attempts to stop her. Eriko wakes up and throws a device that popped open and binded Ryuji and Ai together like two animals caught in a trap. Things get even more awkward when Rose walks in and finds them tied up. Eventually, Eriko deactivates the device, but a rope still connects Ryuji and Ai, and they can't remove it. Eriko then interrogates Ai, gathering personal information. Ryuji asks Ai some questions, and she reveals that she's not being forced to steal. She works independently. The situation becomes tense when Ai accidentally mentions her master. She then explains that she was raised by her master after being abandoned by her parents due to her beastly appearance. She admits that her emotions can trigger her transformation into a beast. After some time, Eriko, Rose, and Ai prepare for bed by taking their baths. A complex situation because Ryuji is tied to Ai, and he's got to go in with them as they bathe. He almost loses his LP as they all fall into the tub. Once ready, they gather together for a conversation where she reveals her real name is Ai. Their chat quickly shifts to a different topic when Ai is asked about her master. Ryuji, suspicious, assumes Ai is being manipulated by her master, but Ai defends her loyalty, insisting that she acts on her own accord and fully supports her master's ideals. Later on, Ai is offered something to eat but initially declines, puzzled by Ryuji and the others' kindness. Meanwhile, Eriko receives some intel from Takura about Ai's master, revealing him to be Furumori, a 40-year-old researcher of lost precious items and a level 10 breaker. With this new information, Eriko confronts Ai, questioning why Furumori would resort to stealing lost precious artifacts. Ai argues that such treasures shouldn't be hoarded by a select few, believing everyone should benefit from them. Later, they hear a knock on the door, and when Rose and Eriko open the door, it was a man holding a box claiming it was a gift. When he opened it, they fell flat unconscious. The man called out to Ai, and she immediately ran to him while dragging Ryuji like a piece of trash. When the man takes one look at Ryuji's ugly face, he sprays something on him, and Ryuji falls unconscious too. After a few days, Ryuji wakes up, ready to start another school day. As he prepares, Rose appears in a school uniform, pleading with him to let her accompany him. She doesn't want to be left behind, insisting that she must go with him. Reluctantly, Ryuji lays down some rules she must follow, and Rose eagerly agrees. On the way to school, Ryuji receives a message from Eriko informing him that his level 10 application has been approved by the society and a specialist will be meeting him at school. When they arrive, a teacher assigns Eriko to Ryuji's class and introduces her to the other students, causing Misaki to feel uneasy since Rose is now her classmate. Just when things couldn't get more awkward, a striking woman named Bianca storms into the classroom, and without even flinching about the ongoing class, she aims a weapon at Ryuji after seeing his ugly face. A bazooka with a target system that followed the ugly boy around. She fires a missile that locks onto Ryuji's position, forcing him to flee. He barely manages to avoid the explosion, and moments later he discovers that Bianca is a specialist from the society, sent to conduct a series of tests on him. After the commotion, Eriko and Rose arrive at Ryuji's side. Bianca explains her purpose, but Ryuji convinces Rose to watch from a distance as Bianca performs her examination. Meanwhile, the recent chaos has caught the attention of Misaki and Mao, who are watching closely. Hold up, wait a minute, she fired a bazooka in class. Now these girls get to watch the test? Are they using the mind wipe they use on Men in Black afterwards, or their identity is not a secret? Ryuji finds himself in a rather embarrassing situation when Bianca asks him to strip down so she can take his body measurements. Just as things get uncomfortable, Masato, one of Ryuji's classmates, barges in curious about what's going on. One thing leads to another, and Masato ends up taking Ryuji's measurements instead. Next, a series of physical tests begins, including sprinting, endurance, cycling, optical tests, and even an X-ray. Bianca meticulously records Ryuji's performance, documenting everything from his name and age to his family history and birthday. While all this is happening, Misaki secretly notes Ryuji's birthday, planning to get him a gift. The mood takes a sharp turn when Bianca questions Ryuji about his experience with women, catching him off guard. He admits he's never dated before. Ryuji, Bianca, and the others head outside for more tests. Bianca reveals that Ryuji's next opponent will be a Neo Golem, a formidable hybrid weapon from the San Francisco division. As they prepare for the battle, Eriko uses her magic to prevent Misaki and the other students from witnessing the fight. The battle begins with Ryuji launching an attack, briefly knocking Neo Golem to the ground, but the creature quickly recovers, preparing to unleash a devastating blow. Bianca tries to deactivate Neo Golem, but the controller fails. Realizing the severity of the situation, she suits up, ready to help Ryuji. As the battle intensifies, Rose can't stand by any longer. She ignores Ryuji's earlier warnings and jumps in to save him and amplifies his powers with their Power Ranger engagement transformation. Ryuji delivers a powerful blow, sending the Neo Golem crashing down. Bianca is astonished and records Ryuji's energy levels and discovers that it is the highest ever recorded. After the fight, Rose apologizes for using her powers, but Ryuji thanks her for the help. Unknown to them, Kai, one of Onyx's guards, has been watching the entire battle from a distance before silently slipping away. The following day, Bianca apologizes to Ryuji for the previous day's events. Masato then invites everyone to a group date, using Ryuji's upcoming birthday as an excuse. Misaki also gives Ryuji a gift, though it turns out to be frogs, which he absolutely despises. Bianca quickly realizes that Misaki got the wrong information from his data file. Later, a large package arrives at Ryuji's house for Eriko. Upon opening it, they find an odd painting that leaves Rose feeling unsettled. Meanwhile, Ai and Misaki arrive with homemade cookies and cupcakes. They met at the door to Ryuji's place, and I know some other anime females would have probably turned it into a who will get to Ryuji first. Ai shares that she's getting along well with her parents and is happy to have a family. She then notices something strange about the painting, particularly the word liar inscribed multiple times throughout the artwork. Suddenly, everyone except Ryuji is sucked into the painting. Inside the painting, Misaki panics, unaccustomed to supernatural occurrences, while Eriko tries to keep everyone calm. They decide to explore the strange environment, looking for a way out. As they split up, they discover the word liar scrawled everywhere, adding an eerie tension to their situation. It's as if they've been thrust into a twisted anime crossover between Danganronpa and the Promised Neverland, where mystery and dread are the only constants. Ryuji and the crew regroup after a strange sequence of events, each one sharing their discoveries. AI admits she hasn't seen a soul nearby, joking that they might be in a ghost town. Eriko starts comparing their situation to a horror flick she once saw where a group of girls got stalked by a killer wielding an axe. Just as Eriko finishes her spooky tale, Misaki lets out a scream, pointing at a man who matches the description Eriko just gave. The man stares ominously before charging at them. Rose and I spring into action, fending off the attacker temporarily. Despite their efforts, the man rises again like a villain in Attack on Titan, leaving the group no choice but to retreat to a nearby house where they quickly barricade the door. Meanwhile, Bianca arrives at Ryuji's apartment, filling him in on the situation. She mentions there's a specific curse linked to the painting that seems to have trapped the girls. Back at the haunted house, Rose finds an underground passage leading to a room filled with eerie portraits of the group, each labeled with the word liar. Things take a surreal turn when Misaki finds herself interrogated by a shadowy figure in a mirror, which accuses her of lying. As Ryuji learns from Bianca that the painting's curse only targets women, the girls are subjected to more questions from the shadow, including a chilling one aimed at Ai. Who would you die for? Without hesitation, she answers Ryuji. As the interrogation wraps up, Misaki shares that meeting Ryuji was the most significant moment in her life. This confession ends the session, but not before the man from earlier breaks out of the mirror and branded all women as liars and preparing to attack. Bianca is now being pulled into the painting, and they use this opportunity to kill the Axeman and swoop the other girls out of there. The painting's origins is of a man betrayed by his wife who poured his resentment into the cursed artwork. Spring arrives and the group decides to unwind with a vacation in the woods. Rose, chopping onions, ends up in tears. Suddenly, a girl named Safi swoops down, revealing herself as a dragon. Despite her grand entrance, Safi's attempt to attack Ryuji fizzles out as her powers prove too weak. Safi, who claims to be Onyx's future bride, tries again, this time attempting to control water from the river again, but she just splashed some water around. Eriko used her magic to dunk Safi into the river. After Safi slinks away, the secret gets leaked because these monkeys can't keep shut. Misaki also discovers Ai is a werewolf and promises not to reveal their true identities. Elsewhere, Safi returns to Onyx's house, where she's advised by Kai to avoid picking fights she can't win. Ryuji and Eriko attend a society event where they bump into Tokura. Meanwhile, Rose leaves school with Misaki, thanking her for keeping her secret. On the way home, Rose has a surprise encounter with Safi, who quickly challenges her to a duel. But Safi's magic fizzles out again, leaving her drenched and defeated. I haven't seen anything more pathetic than that in a while. The two eventually end up at Ryuji's house, where Safi showers and admits she dislikes Rose because Onyx has feelings for her. Rose makes it clear she only has eyes for Ryuji. Safi then speaks of a ritual that could turn Rose into a full-fledged dragon. Before leaving, Safi gives Rose instructions on how to complete the ritual. After Safi leaves, Rose eagerly shares her desire to become an adult with Ryuji. Eriko and Ryuji realize that Safi was behind Rose's curiosity. Rose persuades Ryuji to help her complete the ritual, which involves him kissing the markings on her hand. Don't do it, bro. I remember a guy who kissed and got married just like that. As the ritual concludes, Rose starts acting strangely, her emotions flipping like pages in a manga. Ryuji tries to figure out what's wrong, but Eriko steps in, offering comfort. It becomes clear that the ritual has heightened Rose's feelings for Ryuji. Ryuji only grows increasingly concerned, seeking advice from Eriko, who pinpoints the root of the problem: Safi's meddling. Elsewhere, Maruga discovers that a black dragon has raided her library and gone through forbidden scrolls. The next day, Rose comes outside and sees Ryuji. They exchange greetings, and as she stands there shyly looking away, I realize that, damn! Her eyes are so scary. I thought it was normal, but her pupils are like dragons, and one good look at them now and it scared the she out of me. Ryuji, Eriko, and Rose gather for breakfast. The atmosphere is awkward, with tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Rose and Ryuji, sitting close but emotionally distant, struggle to maintain eye contact. As they head to school, Ryuji keeps his distance from Rose, worried about her unusual behavior. Back at Ryuji's apartment, Bianca drops by to chat with Eriko, who shares the bizarre events from the previous day. Eriko admits she's stressed about Ryuji's predicament, hinting at the underlying tension between the two of them. Meanwhile, at school, Mao corners Misaki, asking if she's now friends with Rose. Moments later, Ryuji enters the classroom and is greeted by Misaki. Rose comes in afterwards and immediately asks Mao and Misaki for advice. Simultaneously, Ryuji confides in Masato, admitting that Rose has been acting oddly, even avoiding eye contact earlier that day. As the bell rings, signaling the start of class, Mao's jealousy flares up. She's not thrilled that Misaki is chatting with Rose, especially since Misaki has feelings for Ryuji, making Rose her competition. On their way to class, Rose accidentally bumps into Ryuji, but neither makes eye contact. They're both too flustered to acknowledge the other. Back at Ryuji's house, Eriko and Bianca search for answers to Rose's condition, but come up empty-handed. Suddenly, Safi swoops in, only to be captured by Eriko, who demands to know what will happen to Rose next. Safi hesitates because she's unsure of what to say. At school, the students participate in physical activities, with Rose keeping a close eye on Ryuji as he sprints. Meanwhile, Safi reveals that the ritual was meant to bond the participants, but the effects would take a night to wear off, as she had experienced firsthand. When it's Rose's turn to attempt the pole vault, she makes a valiant effort but lands poorly, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Witnesses, including Ryuji, watch in shock as she falls after seeing Ryuji standing not so far away. She's rushed to a special hospital run by the society. Lying unconscious on the hospital bed, Rose's condition puzzles Takura, who finds nothing physically wrong but suggests medication to help her recover. Ryuji is seeing Rose's state and has become distraught. He turns to Safi for answers, but she admits she has no idea how to help. She could only fly to Onyx to ask how this can be resolved. Ryuji punches a wall as he's losing his mind, and in a surprising twist, Kai arrives at the hospital, retrieving Safi and delivering a message that Onyx wants to speak with Ryuji. They went to the top of the hospital, using a lost precious to communicate over long distances. A cloud of smoke appears, and Onyx appears like a hologram. Onyx confesses that Ryuji is the cause of Rose's condition, and warns that she might die if Ryuji doesn't hand her over. Onyx insists that Rose needs another dragon to survive, putting Ryuji in a heartbreaking dilemma, but let me tell you, that is not the fun part. It's the part that Onyx revealed that our ugly-ass protagonist himself is a lost precious as his name Ryugi, and that's why he is able to wield his weapon /breath. Ryuji can speak, tame, and command dragons, and the reason why Rose reacted that way is because she has an inmate fear in her. Desperate, Ryuji begs Onyx to save Rose, leading to a tough decision. Onyx instructs Ryuji to retrieve Rose from the hospital and deliver her to Kai, and despite opposition from the soldiers, Ryuji manages to hand Rose over before being pinned down. As a result of his actions, Ryuji and Eriko are placed under house arrest by the society for several days. During this time, Misaki gathers the courage to visit Ryuji, offering support and discussing Rose's absence and Ryuji's recent changes in behavior. Their conversation ends with Misaki offering to help Ryuji whenever he needs it, though Ryuji insists he's fine. Later that evening, Maruga meets Ryuji at his building's entrance, revealing that she needs to talk. Now let's end this. Rose wakes up in the hospital, finding Seifi by her bedside. Seifi panics when Rose doesn't recognize her and moments later falls back asleep. Kai comes in and informs Seifi that Rose lost some of her memories due to the fever and the medicine she was given, but assures her that Rose will recover. Kai also drops a bombshell that Onyx is nearly done regenerating, and they'll be leaving the country the next day, aiming to return Rose to her homeland before she regains her memories. Back at Ryuji's apartment, Eriko, Ryuji, and Maruga discuss recent events. Maruga reveals that Onyx attacked her library and accessed forbidden knowledge. Hinting at a long history, Maruga reveals that Onyx once lived in her home country, which makes Eriko realize they must have a history together. However, Ryuji is uninterested in their conversation and heads off to gather dinner supplies. Maruga followed him and tried to keep up with him, but she trips and injures her leg. Ryuji notices her struggling and helps her tend to the injury. They find a spot to sit and chat. During their talk, Ryuji unloads all the information Onyx shared about Rose's condition and expresses his guilt for what happened to her. Maruga counters by suggesting that Onyx's theories might be flawed and could be part of a scheme to claim Rose for himself. She explains that Onyx's ultimate goal is to have Rose and warns Ryuji not to take everything Onyx said at face value because in the sands of time, the Black Dragon has always wanted to take the powers of the Red Dragon. She adds that Ryuji's recent changes are due to a powerful artifact he possesses known as /breath. Maruga believes Ryuji's unique situation might open new possibilities for relationships between humans and dragons. Their conversation ends when she asks him what kind of relationship he intends to keep with dragons. "You know that I know that you know the answer he's going to give." The next day, Misaki notices Ryuji is missing from school. Misaki heads to Ryuji's house, but just as she arrives, she bumps into him outside. Ryuji is looking determined like Goku when he fights Jiren, and he tells her he's heading out. He's made up his mind to rescue Rose, and with Eriko in tow, they head out for the airport. On their way, Eriko dials Takura and learns that Onyx and his cronies are planning to leave the country in a private jet, and after realizing the urgency, she steps on the gas, hoping to beat them to the runway. Later that evening, Kai, Rose, and Safi arrive at the airport, where they board the private jet. Onyx is already seated, looking rather smug. As the jet prepares for takeoff, Safi offers Rose a snack in line with Onyx's wishes, but just as the jet begins to take off, Onyx notices Maruga on the runway from the monitor, and his jaw drops. Despite his shock, Onyx orders the plane to proceed, but Maruga uses her powers to redirect the jet. Meanwhile, the airport is under siege by the Society's guards, who are trying to prevent the jet from taking off. Eriko and Ryuji race to the scene, their vehicle screeching to a halt as they close in on the plane. Onyx comes out of the jet after seeing the situation deteriorate so fast and decides to handle it himself. The classic "you want something done right then, you gotta do it yourself" moment, leaving Seifi with an opportunity to help Rose regain her memories. As Seifi hands Rose the ice cream, Rose's recollections of Ryuji start flooding back, i.e. Eriko and Ryuji finally manage to board the plane after a bit of a struggle. Yeah, that's true. I spawned out of nowhere like an evil spirit mid-airplane takeoff denial. Ryuji finds Rose and holds her close, reassuring her that he'll stay by her side and protect her. Just then, Onyx transforms into his gigantic dragon form right on top of the plane and tries lifting the plane off the ground. Ryuji's dad from a distance fires at Onyx, but the shots are ineffective. No face shown, but this guy's parents are so cool that even Bianca asked for their autographs. Could he gasp that he has a dragon for a parent? Inside the jet, Ryuji and Rose share a lip-to-lip, and this creates an energy radiation so big that it knocks off the Black Dragon. The jet lands safely, and everyone disembarks without further incident. The next day at school, Ryuji's return is met with joy from Misaki. Mao, however, is still determined to play matchmaker and get Misaki and Ryuji together. Rose, Ryuji, and the others join his class, where Bianca boasts about her autograph collection. The anime closes with a teacher walking in, and any dumb fool can tell that's Kai. Takura smiles, pleased to see dragons and humans coexisting peacefully, as he spies through a camera so small it could fit right into the cracks of a wood. When their lips touched, it felt like the world itself held its breath with that big blast of radiation. Just think about it, if a kiss could spark that much energy, what would happen if they clapped? The thought alone is mind-blowing. And Rose? Well, who knows? Maybe next season she'll surprise us all, blooming melons bigger than that of Nezuko when she goes full demon. But that's a story for later. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. If you like the video, make sure to check out one of these other two right here. Also, if you want to see the full plot-filled version, no restrictions, just subscribe to our Patreon in the description below.